And welcome to the Ron Ponder Show. I am, of course, the aforementioned Ron Ponder. And we're going to thank Seatown Radio for hosting us today. And as usual, we do have a guest today. And our guest is a friend of mine, Mike Gallina, who is the Vice President, Organizational Development and Community Engagement for AltCare, the Altman Health Foundation. Mike, welcome to the show.
Ron, it's an honor to be on the show and be considered a friend here at Seatown Radio for sure.
Well, you are, and I keep going back to when we first met, when you were superintendent of the North Canton schools, and I think I was NAACP president at that time, but I'm not sure. But something drove me to your office, and I had some questions or some queries, and 10 minutes after I was there, you answered all my questions and queries, gave me some other solutions for some stuff I wasn't looking for, and proved to me what a good guy you are. So I appreciate you for doing that.
Well, thank you very much. Blessed to have had the chance to do that with you right away. And then, of course, the Ponder Show from 10 to noon with WHBC, that became the connection to whatever you might have needed after that meeting.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you anyway. And one reason that you're here is I wanted to let our listeners know about some of the really positive things happening at Altman and AltCare. One thing that's personally pleasing to me is I've been retained as a consultant to help you guys do some things, and I'm looking forward to doing that. But you've been doing quite a bit already, Mike. What is it, as Vice President of Organizational Development and Community Engagement, and I wrote that down so every time I got to read it, what do you do? What does that mean?
Ron, some folks would say they're still trying to figure out what to have me do. So they give you those titles and they make you fill it all in. But what I've noticed in my roles with organizational development and then community engagement, org development is really the internal part of the organization where we do leadership development. So I run cohort leadership programs. On the AltCare side, we're on our 17th leadership cohort that has 4 to 6 middle managers that go through a 5-part series. So we develop their leadership directly connected to the AltCare culture and climate. Then I run a series of 6 classes that go back and forth between Altman and AltCare for emerging leaders or for nurses who are looking for their continuing ed credits. So it's almost a mini school inside the Altman Health Foundation where leadership would be the class. And so the design of those has been directly connected to what the needs are. Rather than bringing a canned program from the outside into the culture, we developed it based on what the needs were. So internally, a lot of great leadership work and team sessions. Externally, I sit on roughly 8 boards, different boards on behalf of AltCare and Altman. So that's where the community engagement piece comes in. And I'll do a lot of speaking, motivationally for ball teams, schools, and groups, do some strategic planning for companies as a gift back from Altman to that company. So they pay nothing for either the speaking or the strategic planning conferences. So it's a way we give back from the Altman family to the community. So there it is in a nutshell. You got the internal part, organizational development, externally, community engagement.
Wow. We're talking once again to Mike Gallina. He's the Vice President at the Altman Health Foundation.
Back and forth, you're right, Ron, between the two.
What's the difference between the two, Mike?
That's an awesome question because the alt word, and I say the alt vibe, a lot of folks think it's one and the same. Oh, Altman. So they quickly think that's the health delivery system.
The hospital.
The hospital. And it's system of hospitals. So you have Altman Maslin, Altman Alliance Community, just quickly Altman Orville, and we have a Pomerane down in Millersburg that connects to the Altman family. So when you hear Altman, it can be the hospital system, 5 of those, but then any set of physicians' offices that have affiliated with Altman, the Altman Medical Group. There's also part of the delivery system that have offices connected to it as well. Orthopedic surgeons as well. So it just takes you through the whole delivery system. That's Altman. AltCare is the insurance program. And we're an integrated group, which means AltCare aligns with Altman to provide the best possible rate for health insurance. We have contracts with other hospitals, Summa, Cleveland Clinic, United Healthcare, any of those that you would think as hospitals. We have contracts with them as well as AltCare, but our Altman connection is the most efficient and probably the best priced. So we can do things together that others try to do apart.
Wow. As I said, once again, we're talking with Mike Gallina. Now, Mike, there's been quite a few folks in this Stark County area who were actually born at Altman, and there's that connection there. How do you get them to connect or reconnect with Altman in light of competition?
Yeah, in light of competition is a great phrase. So they've been born at Altman Hospital. And as an aside, when I do speaking at middle schools and elementary schools especially, that's my bridge into what's Altman. I just ask them, do you know what hospital you were born in? And roughly 60% will say, I was born in Altman Hospital. So there's the connection to they know about us. But then as the doctors serve them from their primary care physician checkups to stitches in an urgent care to having to go to the ER, they stay with our services. Then they can connect to the alt care world of insurance, typically through their parents' group health plan, that then brings them back through the hospital because of the alt vibe. And then when folks turn 65, we have this program called Primetime Health, which keeps them with us. So we typically say you can be born at Altman Hospital and be a family member until you pass. And we're glad that you've been with us through the whole journey.
Well, now, I wasn't born at Altman, but I used to be an employee there, one of the funnest jobs I ever had. Mm-hmm. And now I am a participant with Primetime. So I'm almost there.
How about you? We've got you as a consultant, which we think is a blessing to us. And we've got you as a card-carrying member.
Yes.
That's pretty good.
Yes, it is. And I just paid my premium not too long ago, which I think is really reasonable given, we talk about competition and some of the healthcare plans that both my wife and I looked at. We looked at it very carefully, but Primetime came out on top. Mm-hmm. And I knew a lot of friends who were a part of that, so I called them and asked them. And what they said, they just bragged about Primetime. The latest was a friend of mine, Dr. Greg Haben. Mm-hmm. He and his wife Jill are members of Primetime. And people like him, encouraged me and my wife to join as well. So I like Primetime, man.
We're so glad that you study us against other programs that you could choose, because you have to do it on an annual basis. But what's unique about Primetime, Ron, and you alluded to it, folks call it my Primetime. I like my Primetime. There's a relationship with it that's different than just a service. So I would say it's really relational, not just transactional. And when you call in, you get a friend or a family member or someone that works in this community to help serve you. You're not going through 3 call buttons to get to an answering service.
Well, 3 call buttons and maybe 2 accents.
Could be there, that's true, as they move those call centers to different places in the world. You're right about that, Ron. And really, we believe you can even come in and see us if you're not sure, and that's the nice part about it, too. What I like about our team in Primetime is that even if Primetime is not your choice, we help you get to the right choice. So the education of, let's compare, this one may be better for you. And our folks are really good about landing you where you should land. So appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, that's unusual, but that's good to hear.
It is. Good serving the community.
Now, some of the things recently that Altman's been involved with, positive things especially, is the Altman Timken Family Cancer Center. That's just been completed. How is that going, and what need is it serving?
Well, Ron, you think about the need that it's serving, at its core is it allows families who are primarily receiving cancer treatment services and the connected family who support them, all to be served in one building. So you get your work around the cancer treatment directly, which would be infusion, but then you get the dietary needs, you get the social emotional support, you get group support for family and caregivers. It is all in the same building. Where before you would see perhaps your doctor, your provider, and then you would have to go to an infusion location, and then perhaps a third location for the support that you would need. It's all in one place, right down to the dietitians who help you before you leave, particular to whatever your treatment is. So when you go in there, it's an amazing center. And we call it a family center for folks that are doing the cancer journey.
Is that is that typical of a hospital to provide that?
No, that's a great question. It is atypical. You can get 60-70% of your services in one place, but typically you have to leave to get that last leg or that one particular service. What was so great about the planning for the Timken Family Cancer Center was it was all done based on feedback from the cancer patient. They built the whole program around feedback from the patient and the family and the doctors. And it was designed around a prompt. If we could do this in one place, what should it have? And they designed the entire program around that.
That's pretty smart.
It was, I call it genius, but also truly heartfelt. If we're going to do this, let's connect to the heart of that family while they're caring for the physical part that they're really on a journey with, because it takes some time to get over that hump.
You know, I say that Altman has a pretty stellar reputation in the community. And there are things that, and people that work there that are your neighbors and friends. How does Altman compare in terms of delivery of services to other hospitals its size around the country?
We're what we call a community hospital. So some folks may say you could take it to a small regional provider. So we'd want to make sure we compare ourselves to similar hospitals. We are not a Cleveland Clinic, which means that's a worldwide system, and they have so many different centers across the country and the world. We are not one of those. You will not find an Altman facility outside of about 12 counties here using Canton as our epicenter. So quickly I say we can't be compared to a larger system. We're a good regional system. So right out of the gate, that's how the comparison would work. And I would say, as you compare us, we've got physicians who have been trained here. They've come through Neomed, not too far from us, and they've moved into the area, usually based upon a recommendation from someone who's already practiced here. So I would call us a family regional delivery center with folks who say, come be a part of our family. And there's 7,100 family members, Ron, when you think about our workforce across the system. So it's a big piece of employment, but it's also done with a family feel.
Wow. And in terms of leadership, I got to give Ed Roth his due, but also Rick Haynes, who replaced Ed, got to give him his due as well.
For sure, Ron. In fact, when you think about them, Ed was the Altman Health Foundation leader for 20 years. Rick built AltCare from day one. So he was the only CEO AltCare had for 35 years until he had made the move when Ed retired to then replace Ed in his role of the Altman Health Foundation CEO. So we're blessed to have Rick's knowledge in the insurance world, but he'd always been a part of the Altman Health Foundation. So he knew the business, he knew the challenge. So to have Ed and Rick together for as long as we did, and now to have Rick in that position, it's truly a blessing, but also it's real strategic because it helps us maintain our community energy, but also our competitiveness regionally.
Well, I've been in Canton maybe 40, 50 years, I don't know. To some people, I'm still not a Cantonian. But Altman has been a part of my life since I moved to Canton. In fact, I came to Canton because Jack Libertor hired me as a cardiac surgical assistant at the time. Well, a surgical assistant at the time, and then I evolved into a cardiac surgical assistant. But one thing about Altman is it's such a well-run facility and business that it's done things internally. When they needed to have some expansion and construction, didn't have to go to a bank. They had saved for it, planned for it, paid for it themselves, and wouldn't construct it until it was paid for. I think that is unique, and I haven't seen that take place in any other healthcare facility since then.
Boy, Ron, it's awesome that you know that. And I give you a great deal of credit for having that knowledge, because when you saw those Altman facilities being built, 80s and 90s, they had that special look, that A almost that was over the entryway. All of those buildings debt-free. To your point, it was all done with reallocation of capital and using the dollars that really their efficient operation allowed them to do. So being run efficiently, to your point, allowed them to reinvest. And when you think about that from a community standpoint, those are your trades, those are your architects, those are all the local folks who design and build those buildings. So it was an economic development tool as well as a health delivery system tool.
And recently, it's a minority business development tool too, because minority businesses have, you've got Lisa Johnson there, you've got John Brasso, is that his first name? Purchasing director?
Yes.
They are working together along with the Minority Business Association and several other groups to increase the amount of minorities who are vendors with Altman, but also partners with Altman.
Yeah, I so honor that. Excited when I learned that was happening. I would use the phrase long overdue, but I'm so glad that it's engaged and those opportunities are forefront each time something comes about, as a small project or even an additional project.
We're talking once again with Mike Gallina. He is the Vice President of Organizational Development and Community Engagement at Altman Health Center and also AltCare. Mike wears a lot of hats, and Mike's a little short dude. I don't know if any of you, those of you who don't know Mike is a short dude with tons of energy, but he played basketball, and he was obviously a point guard, and the type of point guard that I used to hate to play against because you were always one step faster than me and could always shoot that three-pointer before three-pointers were even in vogue.
How about you knowing that? That's true. You had to, and I say, good Lord bless me with the quickness and the agility and the wherewithal to be smart. So what I didn't have in height, I could use those other qualities for to help my teammates. But you're right, Ron, it usually became pesky to the folks that I was defending, for sure.
Well, you were one pesky little white boy, let me tell you.
Thank you. That's an honorable statement, because blending in and making your team better, you got to use your toolbox of skills best that you can.
Yeah, you're right. Mike Gallina from Altman Health Foundation and AltCare. What kind of, now I know Altman so far has a reputation, Mike, of not really laying off anybody because of the economy or the change in healthcare coverage, the healthcare industry, and I want to talk about that in a little bit. But with all those changes going on, Altman is still hiring. They're still got a nursing school. You got quite a few other things going on. So, what's the employment opportunity look like at Altman?
Boy, Ron, we need employees. How's that for one solid answer? We have so many vacancies, about 700 vacancies that could be filled. Now, we know there are not 700 folks going to come right off the street through the door to be hired. Well,
when they hear this interview, they are.
Well, we'd like to get a percentage of that 700 right through the door. And typically, it's about half of that on any given year. But the marketplace, and we'll call it workforce generally, for all folks has been a challenge.
True.
So we could use those employees. As a matter of fact, you probably just heard this week where the Altman delivery system decided to discontinue skilled nursing facility new applicants. So anyone that's in the skilled nursing facility at which is Altman Woodlawn and over Alliance Community, they'll remain there until such time as they can be placed out into another skilled nursing facility. There are 120 nurses that we'll be able to put back into the system so they don't lose their job with this change. They have the opportunity to use their skill set at another one of our locations. So it's really a win-win-win when you look at it. The opportunity for no one to lose their job, the ability to really repurpose some of our rehab centers, and the skilled nursing piece. It was costly for the Altman Health Foundation system. There are others that do it better. And I think of UltraCare and Jerry Schroyer.
Right.
As who you know well with your work with our community involvement programming. So when we heard this coming, most folks would say, oh no. But then when you think about it, it's, oh, there's an opportunity to still provide great care, get it to the right spot, and then help our employee base actually become stronger.
Will there be any more of that?
I think they're looking at all programs under the big umbrella of the Altman Health Foundation, using the skilled nursing as an example. Ron, there could be more. They'll just look at each delivery and say, who else does it in our community that may do it a little bit better? And can we then use the employee base to our original premise to work back into the system so that we can help call it the whole workforce piece that's challenging. It can soften that challenge a bit for us.
Mike Gallina, he is the vice president of Altman Hospital. Mike, how did Altman come into existence? And I guess the Altman family, obviously they gave their name to it, but it's a good thing their name is something that we can pronounce and not some large foreign name that's hard to pronounce. But how did Altman evolve?
It's a great story, and Ron, I know you know a great deal of that history, so I'll be succinct with the story. But really, the Altman name comes quickly to Cornelius Altman, who was basically a farmer who was an entrepreneur. He could do farm equipment and farm implements better than anybody out of Greentown, Ohio. So if you go north on Cleveland Avenue and cross over State Street, the bottom of the hill, there's a railroad track. And Cornelius Altman moved his goods in and out of that spot. Every invention, folks loved it. They would get it out across this country. William McKinley had one of the greatest quotes about him. He said his word was coin in this city, in this county, in this state, and across this country. And that was the president speaking at that point. So we think, well, that must be how this thing came to be. Cornelius was so important. He must have given some money, and that's how the Altman name.
Yeah.
That's not the story. It's the best. Two great women, like we all should know as guys. There are always great women behind us. And in this case, it was his daughter.
Or in front of us.
Both, I would say, leading us and nudging us along.
Right.
And in this case, it was his daughter, Catherine Barron Altman, who then worked with stepmom, Elizabeth. Actually, it was Elizabeth Harder, which would have been his daughter. Elizabeth was daughter. Harder Bank.
Right. I was
right down
say.
here in Canton. So Elizabeth Harder, she married one of the Harders, and Catherine Barron Altman, Cornelius's wife. The two ladies got together and said, we need health care in this community. This was in 1890. And they found a plot of 4.5 acres. They deeded over to what was called the Altman Hospital Association. The ladies had started this. So the land gets deeded over, and in 2 years' time, they opened the doors to the first hospital on the site where we see it today. So over 130 years ago. But Cornelius Altman gets the vibe because he was the guy. But the two ladies were really the foot soldiers in this. And to this day, it lives on the same way, leading our community to improved health. And that was their goal back in 1892.
Mike Gallina is who we're talking with. He's an executive at Altman Hospital and Alt Care as well. Mike, what is on the drawing boards for healthcare? Not necessarily for Altman. I think healthcare and the industry of healthcare has changed radically in the last 10, 15 years, and it's continuing to change. What other additional changes do you see coming down the pike?
You know, fundamentally, Ron and listeners, healthcare as we knew it growing up, going to the hospital was a thing that you maybe had to do, and your stay was typically lengthy, even though you might not have wanted to be there as long. What we're learning now is that the fewer days in the hospital are better, so they're trying to get service into your community so that you don't have to come to the hospital unless absolutely necessary. So the urgent cares, the ability to have doctors' offices do more procedures in the office, and the ability then to have your care done at home with in-home nursing. So healthcare is changing in that the delivery is more to the point of where you live as opposed to you having to consume it in a big building. So that's where the trend of healthcare is going to be. What can be done in what we would call outpatient centers and in the home as much as possible. Then the hospital becomes more of the catastrophic or the longer stay, bigger issue need. So many times these great big buildings might not be as necessary because most of the work now is trying to be done outside.
What if impact has COVID had on Altman in particular?
Boy, when we were in that COVID 2-year period, that's when there weren't enough rooms because you were trying to do surgeries and any type of emergency need, but you had to have rooms for the COVID patients. So the trick there was the overrun of the emergency room into the hospital itself caused actual cancellation of certain surgical procedures that were non-life-threatening. They had to repurpose the beds and what they call throughput. When you come through and do you get put to the correct place, COVID was so challenging, they needed more space for the COVID patients. They had a whole floor designed for it at Altman. So that changed everything because you couldn't do typical surgeries. They were discontinuing those for a period of time, and only life-threatening were going to be done because they didn't have rooms enough. Thankfully, we're not in that situation now.
So do you think that we're better prepared for the next, I guess, pandemic?
I do, Ron. Here's why. What was so cool about, say, the opportunity inside the challenge was that Altman and Cleveland Clinic Mercy worked together like brothers and sisters. So we were able to find a way to balance the rooms, balance the service, balance the professionals to help care for the community. So that was a great silver lining. We are prepared, and we were one of the better because we're 1.4 miles apart. Not many places had that asset, where if you worked together, you could send and receive based on the needs.
And I got to say that I watched both Altman and Mercy Cleveland Clinic work together with minority, I'm drawing a ponder blank, Mike.
You thinking the
neonatal?
Yes, the neonatal program.
Right.
Yep, Vicki Haynes, Rick's wife, was instrumental in getting that underway, and then the professionals at both locations just launched and leaned into it.
I was really impressed how there was a partnership that developed out of need, and both of them did their thing, as we say. Mm-hmm. Which made the program even better. I think, though, that in spite of that, the birth rates of African American kids are still less than non-African American kids. I don't know where that's going to go, Mike.
It's a big part of, we would call it, that socioeconomic development of a community, and it's typically around food and care of the mother early in the pregnancy, and then the ability to nurture that pregnancy to a good delivery point. And so it really takes the community wrapping around it, from literacy, reading to your child in the womb, taking good care of yourself, and then upon birth making sure that those healthy diets and healthy qualities are surrounding that little one.
You mean other people read to babies in the womb besides me?
How about that? Good for you to have done that, Ron Ponder. Yes, sir. The music that you can play, the conversations, it's powerful. Powerful. So it takes that community to surround it with all its services to say, let's help. Where the needs are there, let's help.
I used to put headphones on my wife's stomach so that the babies could hear the music, and Jeff, it was good music too.
Oh. I'll bet Cease loved that.
We're talking with Mike Gallina. He is a vice president at Altman Hospital. His official title is Vice President of Organizational Development and Community Engagement, and we explained a little earlier what that entailed. What do you see? How do you see the two of us, Mike? Now that I'm a consultant for Altman, and I'm really pleased to be able to say that, what are we going to do? What impact are we going to make?
Love that question, Ron, because the relationship that we had always had, you and me, now gets a chance to be formalized. So we take a look at the Altman world and the community world. And Altman is a community player. It's also representative of our community. We should be strong, the two of us, finding ways to educate all sectors of our community and then engage them into the alt world. So that could be on where to get best care, perhaps wellness tips. It could be employment. It could be education. All of those, I see you and I having the opportunity to build bridges and open some doors, because we can connect with the groups and say, here's the bridge to what you need. And it could have been any of those needs that we just listed.
And I'm excited about that, Mike.
Likewise.
Now, you mentioned education, and Altman has a nursing school. Can you explain, nursing schools come in all colors, all religions. What is Altman's nursing school like?
You think of the Altman College. It's one of the, I say, major colleges and universities in our Stark County area. And what Altman College does that's unique is it's directly connected to a health system and a hospital. So every single hands-on experience that you need in real life is extended from your classroom right into the hospital. So if you were taking coursework at any other university, you would have to then find a partner hospital
to do your clinicals and
exactly
stuff like that.
Yep, whether it's phlebotomy to blood pressures to just doing bedside care, you would have to schedule time. At Altman College, it's designed into your coursework, and it's 100% placement coming out of Altman College.
Meaning that once you graduate, you got a job if you want it.
Got a job if you want it. And they have some great tuition reduction if you're willing to stay for a couple of years with the Altman family.
I didn't know that.
They'll reduce a percentage of the tuition if you'll just say, we'll stay 2 years after graduation and work for you. About 300 students, and it's fully accredited, so you can get certificate program. So you just want to get something perhaps that you could do phlebotomy, which would be blood draws. You could do that and be on your way. You can get a BSN in
Bachelor
nursing.
of Science in Nursing.
So you can run that whole gamut. And
is that a 2-year or 4-year?
4-year, but you can squeeze it down if you go year round. And they offer that because we have the hospital right there.
Are there any nursing schools for 2 years anymore?
Not to my knowledge, although I think you could get a 2-year certificate from a particular college or university. But you'd be limited. It might be an LPN or something just under your RN or BSN.
Do you, we're going to have the director of the hospital in and talk specifically.
Dr. Jean Paddock would love that, Ron. She's an excited person to have around anyway, and she would be a cheerleader for what's going on.
Oh, she's a female Mike Gallina, huh?
Oh, maybe multiplied more. She's got the energy, but she comes in a bigger package than me.
Well,
doesn't take much to come in a bigger package.
I was going to say that.
For sure.
And it's funny because Jeff Woodson, who owns Seatown Radio, is in back of me running the board, and he's laughing.
Jeff and I are going to become partners in a lot of ways. I can feel that. We can see it eye to eye.
Speaking of Jeff, how much time do we have here, Jeff?
You're at 32 minutes right now. So.
Okay, appreciate that. I'd like to finish this within the next 7 or 8 minutes.
You're fine.
Okay, and we're going to have you back, Mike. I think that the more education and information that we can dispense to our listeners and to the community, I think the community is only going to be better with that.
I agree, Ron, because I think folks have a notion or perception of Altman or Altman College or Alt Care, depending on what you're using. But I sometimes think that it's independent as opposed to, did you realize that it's a family that does a lot of things together that does help this community? And you can engage with us lots of ways, educating our community to how to do that or how to use the system to their better. That would be great.
And I've noticed the footprint of Altman in a lot of different places. You and I attended the Canal Fulton Chamber Luncheon that I think Altman sponsors. We attended, I think it was the Canton Chamber also. Mm-hmm. And I think we've got 1 or 2 more coming up, but I'm not sure about that.
Yep, you're right on. We have 3 that Alt Care sponsors directly, and then we have Altman Health Foundation presence generally. So you've got that Canton Regional Chamber, then you've got the Canal Fulton Chamber, and the Massillon West Stark Chamber. So that reach is in the communities that we serve, and we love to lift up community through those sponsorships and getting people together to network.
And I tell you, listeners, it's a joy to see Mike Gallina in action. I mean, it's he might be sitting at the table waiting on lunch and the program to begin, and then when he comes up, he takes off his suit, and beneath that is a cape with a big S on the, no, a big G, no, a big A.
Big A for
on the chest.
The big A for alt. There you go.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate you. I appreciated you from the very beginning when my wife and I first met you years ago, and you've been a good friend ever since. So I'm appreciative of the fact that we're now working together, but some of the good things that we're going to be able to do, all I'm going to do is just follow your lead and try to emphasize what you're doing. But you're doing a doggone good job, Mike.
Well, thank you, Ron. It's a joy and a pleasure. Jeff and Ron, thanks for having me. And I can't wait to continue to travel the journey some more, elbow to elbow, Ron.
Appreciate that. Mike Gallina, Vice President of Organizational Development and Community Engagement. Appreciate you, Mike.